Welcome to my channel. So this video, I'm going to introduce you to my favorite new masking tools here in Lightroom Classic. So Lightroom Classic updated in October of 2022, and they updated the mask tools. And there are some incredible new features that I am really excited about and wanting to incorporate into my editing workflow. So I thought I'd do a quick video to just share with you these quick tools that I will be using now on a regular basis. So let's jump in. So for this image, I already made some basic adjustments to the entire image, but now I want to make some selective adjustments. That's where I may isolate and edit on the flower or the background. So to do that, we can use our mask tools. So masking is located in the upper right corner, this circle target. When you click on it, you're going to see, if you've updated your Lightroom in October, you're going to see this new menu. So we have our subject selection, sky and background are right here. This is the AI functionality in Lightroom that is going to mask for you. We also have a new objects, which I'm going to show you because I love it. We still have the brush, the linear, the radial, and the range. Now there's also a new section for people. I'm not going to cover that in this video, but I will do a follow-up video around editing people with the new mask tools. If you shoot people, you're going to love these new features. So let's get started working on this image. And I want to show you clicking on background. Lightroom instantly pulls up and is able to mask this flower. And it would have taken me quite a long time to hand mask this in the past. So this is really fantastic and I'm so excited about it. Now, a reminder, you can change your overlay color. So I usually change it based on the colors in my image. There's nothing blue in this image, so I like using blue. If I had a sky in the image, I would change my overlay color. Now, sometimes the mask is still going to pull in some areas that you may not want included. And there's a little light. You can see the banding where the mask maybe isn't as solid as you want it. So this is where you can use add and subtract to correct the mask if needed. So technology is not 100% all the time. So these are tools to help you continue to refine your mask. So I'll show you how that works. I can click subtract. I'm going to use the brush tool. I'm going to keep the feather high, flow and density about at 80%. Get my brush smaller. I'm using my bracket key. And now if I zoom in, I can just remove a little bit of that mask. So I'm bringing out the details because I don't want to impact my flower. Now, I like to start when I'm doing something really delicate like this with a lower flow, and then you can just go over it multiple times if needed. Now I can come down to the stem. Let's make that brush smaller again. And I'm just going to go over that edge. Now, the next thing I can do is I can click add and I can use the brush here. I'm going to increase the flow and the density, reduce the feather, and I want to add the mask right here where it's a little light. And I'm going to come down and add it right here. So I'm just going over it to make sure that it's going to give me the look that I'm wanting. All right, now that our mask is all set, I can double click on this and name it. This is my background. I like to label my mask if I'm going to do a lot of them, but remember when you open the mask menu, you can minimize it and open it, you'll see that background is selected and it's telling me that's the mask tool that I used. And then I have the brushes that I added. So you can see where I've added those areas. And that also helps you really identify areas that you want to maybe correct in your mask. So now I can remove the overlay and I can make my adjustments to the background. So if I wanted to darken this background, there I can do that. I could reduce some noise and maybe soften it with a little bit of clarity. Reducing the clarity and just darkening that background. So super fast and easy and really fun using that new mask feature for background. All right, so I want to move on now and tell you about object selection. So this is another, we're going to look at a different image. And let me go to, let's use this guy. Got a couple versions here. I want to get one that I have not masked. Okay, so we're going to use this image. And I'm going to take you back to the basic panel. You just click on that right here, these 3 lines. And I'm going to do a global adjustment, just brightening the exposure just a little bit before I make any other changes. Okay, so for this image, I want to impact the flowers and the vase. So I'm going to go to the mask tools, and I'm going to start with selecting the subject. And that's going to be my first starting point. So Lightroom has done a nice job. There are a couple places that I may want to work on my mask, and that's where we would use that add subtract option again. But for this video, I'm going to keep it simple. So now I'm going to make my adjustments. I want to brighten the exposure. I want to add a little bit of texture, maybe reduce the clarity to soften the flowers, and a little bit of saturation, just to pop those a little bit more. Now what I'm noticing is it's also brightening the vase because that's where our mask is. So if I decide I want to change that, I have a great new tool to do that. I can click subtract on my mask. So go to subtract, and now I can select objects. Now you have 2 modes here. If you look right here on the right, we have our brush and we have the square marquee. I'm going to use the square marquee. I have found that it works great and I really love using it. So I'm just going to make a box right around this vase, and let's click on our overlay, and we can see that Lightroom has done a fantastic job of removing almost all of that overlay, of that mask. It is now removed off of our vase and it's not impacting it. Now it kept a little bit of it here in the shadows, which I am actually fine with. I can turn it on and off to see that impact. So this is my before, and then let's get rid of the overlay and you can see the after. Now for this object where I removed the vase, you can see it before, how bright it is, and after. So it is so fast now versus having to use the brush tool. Now I want to impact these books, and I want to make the books match a little bit more the colors in my image. So I'm going to add a new mask, and I'm going to select objects. Again, I like to use the marquee, but there are times you may want to use a brush for something smaller. So I'm going to come in and draw a box around the books, and it did a great job of isolating just those books in my image. I'm going to remove the overlay, and now I'm going to come in with the hue slider, and I'm going to adjust the color of these books to match closer the colors in my image. I'm going to reduce the saturation a little bit. I don't want them so bright. I want them to look a little vintage and old. And I'm probably going to bring up the texture, and again, maybe soften those a little bit. And so very quickly, I've been able to do that with this option selection tool mask. So it is fantastic. I'm loving using it. I want to give you another example using the object selection. So let's actually go over. I think I have some images of some apples that I wanted to work with. So let's see if I can find those really fast back in my library, and we will pull those up, and then I can show you, let's find those apples. I can show you how that works to apply your mask as well. All right, so I have this apple image that's loading up, and I want to go to develop now. And again, I want to show you the object selection because again, I think it's my new favorite mask. So I'm going to come in and let me remove all these previous masks that I have been doing. So I'm going to delete all the masks that I had out there. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do with this image is I'm going to work on the background. So I did a background mask, and now I want to subtract, and I'm going to use object selection because I do not want this apple impacted. And so it has removed both apples but kept the leaves, which is fine because they match my background. I'm going to double click on the name mask 1, and I'm going to label this background. If I can type today, background darken, and click OK. Now I'm going to go over to the exposure slider, and I'm going to bring down the exposure on my background, bring down the highlights a little bit, and maybe reduce the clarity. So I'm just making that a little bit darker. All right, so we did our background. Now I want to work on the apples. So there's several ways to do it, but a new way is to create a new mask, do your, we can do select subject first and see if it selects both apples. Now this other apple is a little soft and faded, so it did not. It was kind of blending in. So what I want to do now is I've got this mask. Let's go ahead and rename this one. And this is our apples. And so now I want to add to this mask. And again, I'm going to use objects to add. I'm going to come over and use that square. Now we've got both of our apples. We do have a little bit of masking on this leaf, which I don't want to brighten. So I'm going to go to subtract and actually grab my brush, make sure that my feather, my flow, my density are high, and I can brush off that blue of the mask where I do not want it. Now this would be a great time to change my overlay color because I can probably see it a little bit better, maybe by changing it to red. So now I don't see any additional red in my image except on the apples. So now I can come over, I can remove the overlay if I want, and I can work on these apples. So what I want to do is add a little texture, add a little clarity, and then I want to darken and deepen the color tones, maybe adding a little bit of that green. So I can make those adjustments, also maybe reduce a little noise on there and make that shift. So that is a fun way to work with objects. Now I want to show you another tool with the brush that is really fun and something that you can all incorporate into your editing work. So for this image, we've got some beautiful light up here and it's very blue. I want to give it a little bit more warmth and I want the light to be directional. So I'm going to create a new mask and for this, I'm going to use the brush. And I'm going to keep the feather high and the flow and the density all the way up. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is come over with my brush and I'm just going to start painting in this corner. And now I'm going to come down, enlarge the size of the brush, hold the shift key and brush in this area. And we've got this beautiful directional line. Now I can increase the mask here if I wanted to. I'm going to undo that. What I actually want to do is reduce the flow and density of my brush. And I'm going to just brush a little bit more of the mask right in here where this light is. So with the brush tool, you can continue to add, but I wanted you to see the feature of clicking, holding shift, and you can make directional lines, which can help you impact your image in a really fun way. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some warmth. So just bringing up that temperature in this area with this light. And I could also give it a little bit more exposure, just a tiny bit to really shine that right here on that apple. Now, if I decided I didn't like the light on this apple, I'm still working in this mask and we can call this apple light. So what I can do now is click on this mask, I can subtract. And again, I could use my objects and I can just remove that light from that area of the apple. So here is with the light on it and there's without. So you have so many ways to customize your mask tools and using these new object selections are just fantastic. I'm loving it. So if I wanted to maybe make this apple a little bit more red, again, I would probably in the past come in and have used the brush. Now I can select my object and it's mask it for me. I can subtract really fast where I don't want the mask. So I'm going to take off the overlay. I don't want to impact the green down here. So I'm going to just remove some of that. Let's take the flow and density up. And I'll turn back on the mask so you can see it. And yeah, I just want to soften that down below. So now I've got my mask. We can call this one the red top of apple. And I can come over. I like to remove my overlay. I can increase the saturation of that red tone. I could also make it a little redder if I wanted to make it really kind of pop. So lots of options with using these incredible new features here in Lightroom. So I hope you'll play around with your background selection, with the editing with the option of doing objects, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun with those. If you are new to Lightroom Classic and you're wanting more training, I do offer a full course on Lightroom Classic. I run it about every other month, and I do have additional videos on my site related to Lightroom. So I hope you'll subscribe and enjoy learning more about editing and keeping things simple. Thanks, everybody.